she pulled me along by the arm.
Your instincts. Fuck. I'm pissed. Because now Chipotle has something that they call Chipotle honey chicken, right? But when I was working at Chipotle, right about 3 or 4 years ago, I used to make that same. I don't know what it tastes like now, but I used to take the regular chicken, put it back on the grill, put honey on it, and the dark Tabasco sauce, and then just grill it up, flip it, and all that on the grill. Shit was busting. I'm saying. And it got to a certain point where my coworkers would want me to make that Chipotle honey chicken that I made so they could eat it on their break. Like I had a business within the business. And at the time, I even had my field leader taste that. And he said that was good. I don't know if Chipotle could have cut me a check because I was just using what they had at their restaurants. And I was just making that Chipotle 10 times better. But it was just their ingredients. But I feel like Chipotle could have did something. But I didn't know who to talk to about this. I feel like Chipotle could have wrote me a $10 million check. We're not going to talk about it, though. Sup? No, let's go. Chucky! You missed me with the bullshit. No. The fact that Chuck E. Cheese is still in business.
I used to go to Chuck E. Cheese sometimes when I was a kid, and I always enjoyed it. I would play the arcade games and eat the pizza that they had, which was really good.
Oh, God. Oh, man. I don't know if I ever I do not know if I've ever eaten the Chuck E. Cheese pizza. You know they got that shit in stores now? In grocery stores? If you don't know about the Chuck E. Cheese pizza, just look up some YouTube videos about it. Apparently, they use reused pizza. It should be uneven and whatnot.
Several of my friends had birthday parties there, and I had one once as well. But my scariest experience happened one time when I went there with my best friend David. I was 7 years old, but I remember it like it was last week. I just remember that we were there on, I believe, a Saturday morning, and we got a bunch of coins and started playing all the arcade games. David's mom took us there, and I was going to David's house to hang out afterwards. After playing arcade games and winning tickets for a while, I remember that I was standing not too far away from the playground area. There was a spot that was basically like a play place that you would see at a McDonald's or Burger King. It was a slide with some monkey bars and tunnels and stuff that you could crawl through. I glanced over and I saw a kid looking through the window of one of the elevated tunnels leading to a slide. He was just staring at me really intensely. The kid was maybe a couple of years older than me, and I didn't recognize him. I even looked around, wondering if he was staring at me or somebody else, but he was definitely staring right at me, and it was really weird. I looked away, and then I moved to another area out of view of the kid. After that, I pretty much forgot about it and moved on to some other game. Maybe like an hour later, though, I was still in the arcade with David. I remember that I noticed the kid that was staring at me again. He was staring at me once more with the wide eyes and intense stare. I was sure that he was trying to scare me or prank me and was joking around, but it was still really weird. He was standing really far away this time and basically on the complete other end of the arcade. Once more, I decided to just walk away. I went to another area and played a different game there. I thought the kid was pretty strange that was staring at me, but I just did my best to forget about it.
My ass. I would have shouted out, "Hey! Hey! Hey, kid! Cut that shit out! What? You back up. Hey! Hey, kid! Clock that. What? What am I trying to say? Cut that. Oh, okay, got it. Hey! Hold on. Hey! Hey, kid! Cut that clock shit out. Alright? You've been eyeballing me ever since I got here. It's already bad enough that I came to this clock shit in the first place. But then your clock ass gotta stare at me. I'm not having it. That's what I was trying to say.
And pretty quickly, I was able to. We stayed at the Chuck E. Cheese for maybe another hour or two.
Oh,
I'm not
no.
sure exactly.
No.
Then David's mom took us back to David's house, which was not that far away from the Chuck E. Cheese. When we got back, David and I mostly hung out in his living room. I'm pretty sure that we just played video games and some other stuff around the house. The next thing I really remember, though, was at nighttime. My mom was going to come and pick me up pretty soon, but in the meantime, I was in the living room with David, which was at the front of the house. I remember that I looked out of David's front window into the street. By now, it was dark out, and I saw what appeared to be the same kid from Chuck E. Cheese standing in the street.
I know you
He was
lying.
staring at me once again with wide eyes like before. It was the creepiest thing I had ever seen. David saw him as well, and we both quickly covered the windows with the shades. After that, we didn't look back out of the windows until my mom was there. When I left, I did not see the kid anymore, so he must have gone. I remember telling my mom about it, but she didn't seem too concerned. I think she thought I was exaggerating, or she just didn't think it was that weird. But I still think it was really weird to this day.
Okay, so Ma, you let me know when you get a stalker or you get somebody that's staring at you all the clocking time. And you tell me about your experience, okay? Because where you at? Where you at? What's going on? What's up? You in cahoots?
Sure if the kid was one of David's neighbors. David didn't seem to recognize him. I guess it's still possible though, and to me, that's the only thing that makes sense. Overall, I still don't know why the kid would stare at me like that, especially to stand out in the street at night. It was very strange. Luckily, I never saw that kid again after that.
I hope not. I feel like he kept seeing you though.
Many years ago, I used to work at a Chuck E. Cheese. This was by far the craziest thing to ever happen. I worked there from the time I was 16 to the time I was 18, and it was a decent job. Over the years, I did a little bit of everything there.
So, you've been working at a cluck-ass place for 2 years, give or take. I know you seen some shit that you can't talk about. This is one of them. I mean, you can talk about it, but I know there's other shit that you cannot talk about, or you choose not to talk about. Chuck E. Cheese for 2 years? Man. I know some places that I probably would not like to work at, or I would never work at. Chuck E. Cheese is one of them. Walmart is another one. Probably a graveyard. Probably a morgue. Is that the one that deals with dead bodies? I don't know, but Chuck E. Cheese is definitely on that list of me not working there.
One time though, towards the end of my time working there, it was a pretty quiet night. We were closing soon, and there were a few people here and there. As things continued to quiet down even more, I was getting ready to start cleaning things and close up. That's when out of nowhere, I saw this man come out from the hallway that led to the back area.
Man.
This was clearly for employees only, and this man was not an employee. Right away, I also realized that he was wearing the head to the Chuck E. Cheese mascot. We kept it in a back room where sometimes an employee would dress up as the rat for birthday parties or whatever. Nobody was supposed to be doing that today though.
I can only imagine how dirty and smelly that Chuck E. Cheese head is. Like, do they ever clean that shit? And if so, how do they clean it? I farted, excuse me.
This guy seemed to have snuck into the back and put it on. He started very quickly walking around the arcade area. Even though there were not that many people there, he was still getting a big reaction out of those that were. Another employee and I tried to go over to him and get him to stop. As we approached him, he quickly walked away and we followed. But before we could catch up with him, he then turned and ran back towards the back room. He was sprinting, and so he was able to mostly get away from us. By the time I arrived at the back hallway, I couldn't find the man. However, I did find the Chuck E. Cheese mascot head laying on the ground in front of the rear exit door. I figured the man had left out the back door, and thankfully he didn't steal the rat head. I picked it up and brought it back to the room where we stored it. It was a pretty crazy situation, but I was just glad that the man was gone and everything seemed fine. So at that point, I went back to work for the final 30 minutes or so that we were open. For the next short period of time, things resumed like normal. More people left and it became quieter and quieter. Finally, closing time came, and another one of my coworkers left. Now it was just me and another coworker. I went over and made sure that the place was empty, which it was, and then I went over and locked the doors. After that, I headed to the back room to clock out. When I arrived back there, though, I passed by the room where we kept the rat costume. I thought that I saw movement out of the corner of my eye when passing by it. I assumed it was probably one of my coworkers and kept walking, but immediately I just had a bad feeling. Maybe it was because of the guy from earlier, but I felt like I should check and make sure. So I backed up and then went to the doorway of the room. I looked inside and saw the same man was there. He was crouched down half behind a table and looking right at me, wearing the rat head once again. It was one of the creepiest things I've ever seen. I told the man to stop, and when I did, he got up and then quickly started running in my direction. I moved back, not knowing what he was doing. The man then ran right past me and back out towards the arcade. I walked back over there, nervous of what the man could do. He started running around the entire place. I yelled at him and threatened to call the police, but it seemed to have no effect on him. I had one other coworker there with me who seemed stunned at what was going on. The man ran around for probably 2 or 3 minutes. Then he finally went to the front door, opened it up, and ran out, taking the rat head with him.
Damn!
We were relieved that he was gone. After that, we were able to go home a short time later. I remember that several days after that, the rat head part of the costume was found a few blocks away in an alley. I never saw the man again.
I hope it's still there.
I remember one time when I was a kid, I went to a birthday party at a Chuck E. Cheese. It was for one of my friends, Jaden. We weren't best friends or anything, but in the same friend group. On the day of the party, I was dropped off at the local Chuck E. Cheese by my parents. There were maybe 10 or 12 kids there total at the party. A few of the other children's parents were staying at the party the entire time, and they sat at the tables. After presents and some pizza, us kids were free to roam around the place and do what we wanted. We each got a bunch of coins to play the games with. Most of the kids split up, and I remember that I played countless arcade games over the next hour or so. Then, for a while, I was playing skee-ball by myself in the corner. That was probably my favorite game, and there wasn't really anybody else that was close to me. That was when I remember being approached by a woman. She called me by my name and said that we were leaving. Immediately, I assumed her to be one of the kids' parents. I figured she was helping out with the party and that we were leaving. So I said okay, and then she told me to follow her, so I did. We walked through the arcade, and then went towards the front of the Chuck E. Cheese. The next thing I knew, we were walking right out the front door.
Damn!
Now, I didn't see any other kids or parents. I'm not really sure why, but at the time, I just didn't think much of it. We walked outside and into the parking lot out front.
Oh my God!
As we started to walk towards the vehicles, I still wasn't thinking much of it. I guess I figured maybe everyone else had already left the Chuck E. Cheese. Or maybe I was just not thinking of possible scenarios because I was a little kid. Either way, we had made it quite a ways into the parking lot when I suddenly heard voices yelling from back near the Chuck E. Cheese. I looked back and saw some other parents. They were yelling stuff like, "Where are you going?" and "Come back." At first, I was just really confused and didn't know what they were yelling about. But that's when the woman that I was with grabbed me by the arm forcefully. She then started pulling me along with her. And that's when I realized something was up. I heard more shouting, and my instincts finally kicked in that I should get away from this woman. As she pulled me along by the arm.
Your instincts. Fuck. Oh. Your instincts suck. Now, if you were to have Adidas blood, you'd be set for life, but you don't. Man, you gotta get your shit together.
I suddenly tugged away from her. To that point, I hadn't tried to get away, so I was able to take her by surprise, and she let go. At that point, I turned around and ran back towards the Chuck E. Cheese. Several other parents were already running towards me. I ran to them and then looked back and saw the woman now running to a car, and she quickly got inside. The car drove away really fast, and I remember the tires squealing as it did. Then we went back inside the Chuck E. Cheese.
God, man, sometimes I wish this shit was like a movie or something. You know? Because I can imagine, like in a movie, the kid runs back to the Chuck E. Cheese with the other parents, right? And then one of the parents sees the cluck-ass woman about to drive off, but then, like shoots something or flicks something to their tires, and so now they're flat, so they can't move.
I remembered that the police were called, and they arrived a while later. My parents came to the Chuck E. Cheese and picked me up as well. That pretty much ended the party, but I don't really remember anything else beyond that. I'm not sure if the woman was ever located and caught or what. That's the craziest experience from my childhood, though. It's crazy to think of how close I came to being kidnapped. I'm grateful to the other parents who noticed me leaving and came out to stop it.
They took a little minute, though. Hell, they took a minute to get out there. You almost got clocked up all the way.
This happened almost 10 years ago now. During this time, I had recently graduated from high school. I was in college, but back home for the summer. One of my best friends was a girl named Claire. She worked at a Chuck E. Cheese during this time.
You might as well go ahead and just let Claire be. Cut ties. She works at Chuck E. Cheese. Or she did. You gotta cut her off ASAP if you haven't already.
One night, she asked me for a ride home from work. I didn't work at the Chuck E. Cheese, but I didn't have anything going on, so I could give her a ride. And Claire lived not too far away from me. I think her car was broken or something, but I can't remember exactly. Anyways, she'd been working at the Chuck E. Cheese for a while, and sometimes worked closing shifts. On this night in particular, she was working to close, and told me the time that I should arrive. So that night, I drove my car to the Chuck E. Cheese. It was located on the edge of the part of town that had most of the stores and restaurants and stuff. By now, things were very quiet. There were a couple of businesses next to the Chuck E. Cheese that were now closed, and the parking lot was basically empty. I pulled in and parked my car in a random parking space, and then texted Claire that I had arrived. I was a couple of minutes early, so I didn't expect her to leave right away. As I sat there in the parking lot, I noticed one other person outside. There was a man kind of walking around outside of the Chuck E. Cheese on the sidewalk in front of it. He seemed to just sort of be roaming around. About a minute into waiting, and I got a text from Claire saying that there was a creepy guy who had been at the Chuck E. Cheese, and she asked me if I had seen him. I texted back mentioning the guy in the parking lot, assuming that was him.
All I'm saying is, if you gonna roam around, can you roam your ass around somewhere 6 miles away? Because anything within a 6 mile radius, in my life, I feel like my life is like, in danger. Or you clocking with my shits, I'm gonna clock you up to the max, get my friend, and we bouncing. I might get her. I don't know. They might be in cahoots.
Time later, Claire responded, saying that she hoped he would leave and that she would be out in a couple of minutes. I watched the man from my car, and after he paced around the front of the Chuck E. Cheese, he sort of stopped and then looked over at me.
Okay.
When he saw me, he just started staring at me for a moment or two. and then he started walking in my direction.
Oh my God.
I got a bad feeling when I saw that and wondered what he was planning to do. The man walked all the way over to my car and then...
I would have just drove off and said, Claire, sorry. Tough. See? Claire and the guy's in cahoots. It's a 50-50 chance. Gotta cut Claire off.
...onto the driver's side right by me and then knocked on the window. I looked and made sure that my doors were locked, and after seeing that they were, I then rolled my window down just barely an inch. The man didn't even say anything to me though. He just tried opening my driver's door, which was locked. When this happened, I rolled the window back up. The man then started banging on my driver's window rather hard, and I didn't know what to do, so I drove away. I hit the gas, leaving the guy standing there in the parking lot. I knew that I had to pick up Claire still, but I needed to get away from the...
You watched him walk to your car this whole time. He didn't do nothing.
After I left the parking lot, my plan was to circle back around and hope that Claire hadn't left the Chuck E. Cheese building yet. Obviously, I hadn't had a chance to let her know that the guy tried getting in my car, so I drove down the street and then turned around and drove back. When I arrived at the Chuck E. Cheese again, I saw the man was standing right outside of the building. He was knocking on the front door to the building, which I'm assuming was locked. I parked my car in a space again, and then rolled my window down and yelled at the guy to stop. He looked over at me, and I braced myself for what he would do next. But surprisingly, he turned and walked away from the Chuck E. Cheese, not in the direction of my car, but in another direction altogether. I watched the man walk to the side of the parking lot, and then go into a small grass area with some trees separating that parking lot from another one. After the man had basically gone out of sight, I saw Claire walking out of the Chuck E. Cheese. She then started jogging towards my car and looking around. It was like she knew the guy might come back again. When Claire had made it a little more than halfway to my car, that's when I saw the man again. Claire looked behind her for a second and then started running faster. I saw the man emerging from behind a tree and then start full-on sprinting towards us. Claire ran faster and was able to make it to my car and get inside. When she did, the man was still full-on sprinting towards my car and was maybe 40 feet away. I quickly put the car into drive and got out of there. The man was thankfully unable to reach my vehicle, and I left safely. I was able to give Claire a ride home, and we were very glad to escape that guy. After that, I never heard anything more about him being at the Chuck E. Cheese. I'm not sure what he wanted or what he was doing that night, but it was a very crazy experience.
It would have been nice if you said you cut Claire off too. Cut her off.
Back when I was a teenager, I used to hang out with my friends all the time.
Right.
One night in the summer, we had gone to a local park and played some pickup football. We would go to the local city park that was a few blocks away and maybe a 15-minute walk from my house. But it was a nice park, and the kids in my neighborhood and I went there quite often. This time, we had played football until past sunset. We knew that we should be getting back home, so we all started to walk back. As we did, a few kids left to go their separate ways after about a block or two. Then it was me and 3 other kids for most of the rest of the way. We walked for several more blocks and then went by a few businesses. There was like a Subway and McDonald's, and then across from that was an old Chuck E. Cheese. It had just recently closed a few months prior. As we walked past, I can't remember whose idea it was, but one of the guys wanted to walk closer to it. So we went in the Chuck E. Cheese parking lot, which was empty. We were just walking around and just joking and stuff. However, we went around to the back of the Chuck E. Cheese for some reason, and it was kind of like a back alley area. We noticed that a door to the Chuck E. Cheese was cracked open. Of course, being teenage boys, we were all very curious and wanted to see what was inside, especially because the place was abandoned. We carefully went to the back door and quietly opened it and went inside. Right after going in, it was mostly dark. However, the Chuck E. Cheese still had a good number of things inside of it. We walked through this hallway and then saw the arcade, and most of the games were still there. It was really crazy to be inside, and I was ready to turn around and leave at any second. We kind of just explored and looked around for maybe 5 minutes or so. Then, we suddenly all heard a noise coming from the other side of the building, but inside. Instantly, we all started running back to where we had entered. Nobody said a word, and within 10 seconds probably, we were all near the back hallway. Then, we heard footsteps going out into the arcade and moving closer to us. That's when we all scrambled back to the door. One by one, we quickly made our way outside and into the alley again. When we were all outside, we left the door propped open like it had been and then started walking away. We were walking at a fast pace from it to go back to the sidewalk. When we were a good distance away, I remember looking back. I saw this guy open up the door and look towards us. It was dark out, so I didn't get a good look at him at all, but it was very creepy. The guy just stood there, looking in our direction. I don't know why I continued to look at him, but I did. As I was doing so, my friends noticed me looking back, and they stopped and looked as well. It was at that point when the man suddenly slammed the door shut and started walking in our direction. The way he slammed the door made it seem like he meant business. At once, we all just started sprinting. We ran all the way back to the sidewalk, and then kept going all the way to our neighborhood. When we got into the neighborhood, we didn't see the guy and thought that we had lost him. But still, we didn't waste any time and said bye to each other and then went our separate ways. I got home that night and was grateful to have made it back safely. Luckily, none of us saw that man again. We also didn't go back to the Chuck E. Cheese. I regret going into the Chuck E. Cheese that night. We should have just walked past it and went home. The building later turned into an auto zone, which it still is today that I'm aware of. I will never forget that crazy experience.
Look, all I'm saying is, if you know somebody, or if you did work at Chuck E. Cheese, currently do, or about to work there, you was a cluck ass, you're currently a cluck ass, and you will forever be a cluck ass. I just want to let y'all know that. Chuck E. Cheese is probably one of those businesses or like jobs that's like, it's probably like top 5, top 10 of places to not work at. If you don't believe me, try working there. I've never worked at that Chuck E. Cheese. I've been there before, and I was just scared the whole time. I was nervous. I was on eggshells. But believe me if you don't want to. Try working at Chuck E. Cheese. Can you imagine? They turn Chuck E. Cheese like a 24-hour Chuck E. Cheese? Them graveyard shifts? Oh my God. Jesus. Keep it cool, keep it classy, and I love you. Stay happy, my family.